Minister of Education or the Minister in the Ministry of Education, and they would suggest that everything is being done as best as possible. Education is often given one of the largest shares of the budget here in TNT. And if you ask the question to tutor will say that teachers are doing their part and doing their best as possible, given the resources or the circumstances, whatever it is that they may face. And even question marks regarding another issue, remedial classes that tend to happen over the vacation period. So exactly where is the system faltering if all sides are making the argument, we're doing our part?
Yeah, so there was one, I've heard the responses from the ministers of education over time, and I think where we lose it is where we may be collecting and collating data and a rigid and stringent system of monitoring and evaluating government policies is where we slip, so that we would have an announcement or a policy that, and I'll use the vacation remedial program because that was a direct reaction to 2022's SEA results, which showed a startling amount of students, number of students scoring below 30%, and that we really needed to do something quickly. And where the government lost me as a supporter for a program that could have been a good thing is that after the vacation remedial program, at the end of the July-August vacation in 2022, a responsible government that is committed to data-driven policy would have moved very quickly to assess the attendance, the efficacy, the efficiency of the July-August vacation revision program before adding more money to it, before implementing it as mainstay within the education system, before doing any of these things, consult with the relevant stakeholders, because they've then now implemented the program across the board in various schools. When the attendance record was abysmal, the performance record is non-existent to the public, and no account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago whether or not the millions of dollars that they've spent behind it is working. We will have to wait. I mean, if the government is continuing like this, we will have to wait until we see CSEC performances for these students. But these students who would have gone through this space and this system, but there is a space for them to be evaluated at the end of term. There is a space where we can listen to teachers more. We can listen to the PTA. We can listen to the relevant stakeholders that said, listen, we have an issue. We have an issue when you move students who have not attained the relevant competencies to get into the secondary school system, that they come in there and they falter because they are not ready to take on the workload of the secondary school system. And then you end up with a lot of disruptions, and you end up with what you're seeing in terms of the school violence in certain spaces. Some of these schools that we see that are reoccurring incidents of school violence, when you take a step back and you see how many students were placed in that school who scored below the 50% mark, the 30% mark, that you're giving these teachers in certain schools a space where they are asked to do human service in terms of getting students who came into that system unprepared for what they were supposed to be prepared for in the primary school system.
Well, therefore, MP Haynes, based off the arguments that you're pushing forward, how much is our education system actually laying the groundwork or laying the foundations for vulnerable individuals in our society or disadvantaged individuals in our society?
I think that is the most egregious part of this entire thing, that the students who are most disadvantaged, the students who are most in need of our interventions, most in need of our targeted policy making, they are left out of the system. That we are creating a future where the disparity of those who can afford to help themselves and those who cannot becomes ever widening. And that is to say that students who come in from households where parents are unemployed or seasonally employed, who cannot afford things like school transportation, physically getting to school, who cannot afford things like the extra lessons and the extra time, that they are left out of the system. That we have school social workers who are the ratio that they have to deal with in terms of social worker to student number is just impossible. It is impossible for them to deal with. We have budget cuts at the students support services division all the time, which means that we are not able to give the extra support, the extra hand. Because there's one thing the teacher can do. There's another thing that school guidance counselors can do. But if the government is very serious about this all of government approach, then they ought to use all arms of the government to ensure that we are reaching those who need to be reached. Because we as a society understand the ramifications of leaving people out of the system, leaving people without access to opportunities to improve their circumstance creates a very untenable situation.
Now, honestly, I don't have the data or the statistics or any studies that would show the correlation between the education system in Trinidad and Tobago and crime or criminal activity, though you did point out the increasing, exposure to school fights that is coupled with the use of camera phones and so on now. But would you say that there is indeed a relationship between the number of school dropouts, the number of individuals who cannot access education, to that of criminal activity and crime in Trinidad and Tobago?
Certainly. Well, we have the Selwyn Ryan report from I believe 2012, but even in the absence of Trinidad and Tobago specific data, that acceptance of an access to opportunities and finding yourselves in spaces where you ought not to be in the future, that's kind of a well accepted. There's a kind of well-accepted correlation between the links between access to opportunity, poverty, etc., and crime, in particular gang violence, which is something that we see very specifically within the Trinidad and Tobago context. In terms of the school violence and the increasing camera phones and whatnot, when I touch on school violence in particular, I often raise the issue of assessing whether or not the students who are participating in the school violence, in the fights, etc., and for us to do a very careful and rigorous assessment of their performance from primary school coming into the secondary school system, because I think that will give us an interesting, if not very informative data set as to whether or not students who find it difficult to perform within the academic structure find themselves in spaces to be disruptive, and there are things that we can do. There are things that we can do to help these children, because at the end of the day, they are children, and we have to help them along the way as you go through the space of making right decisions and figuring out right from wrong and getting into these spaces. Because I think when we look at the fights, a lot of the persons looking on forget that they are in fact children. But
MBA and Zaline, I'm not disputing the points that you're making. It's very difficult to do so. However, the other aspect of it, of which we failed to touch on this morning, is the fact, and I'm not saying that it's a possibility, it's the fact that students do not even necessarily care to go to school. They don't necessarily care about their education. And even if you look at the reaction of some parents, even how parents are now going into this school, and in some instances they're referring to it as defending their child, but having disputes with other students. What is taking place there is that even if parents don't care, in many circumstances you see that parents don't care. So whilst we're arguing against the failings of the system, the households are failing as well, and they're failing their own children and the students.
Absolutely, and that is something that we've seen across the board. I've had in my office during my office day, some persons who work within the school social work system come in and we've been trying to figure out a way that we can partner as a community to assist. And so what we're looking in for 2024 as a member of parliament, so I'm wearing my member of parliament hat because I'm looking specifically at my community, the schools within my community, where we've reached out to some of the community organizations, churches, etc., to put forward a parenting workshop, get together, and that kind of thing. Because, look, I mean, yes, we face significant difficulties, and yes, as a society, you are looking on and you are seeing persons who are increasingly frustrated, increasingly disgruntled, increasingly willing to drop out of the system and saying because these things are not working for them, etc. And whatever the reason, those of us who sit within policy-making spaces, we cannot simply throw our hands in the air. There must be something that can be done. And so we've been, as the Member of Parliament for Tabaki, working to partner with the schools within my district, working to partner with the organizations who do outreach within my district to come together and see where we can lend support. Because the frustrations come from somewhere. They don't just, appear out of nowhere. It is a constant feeling of believing that no matter how hard you try, the system is set up against you.
No,
so
it's a very good point that you made there. The frustrations stem from somewhere, and we can go into a plethora, the list, the magnitude of the list in regards to a lot of frustrating circumstances here in TNT. It goes on and on. So I understand that. But to a point that I think we tend to ignore, do you think that education here in Trinidad and Tobago is now treated as a privilege rather than a right? Or should it be both? But we're confusing the two.
But education is, to me, certainly a human right. I mean, I would have raised that point, especially in a specific context of the migrant children, but certainly for all children existing within our borders, that is our right. Trinidad and Tobago has distinguished itself since our independence as a society where once you've educated yourself, you can experience a level of economic and perhaps social mobility that that countries around the world may not have been as easy. What we've seen over time, though, is because of structural deficiencies that emphasis on education is going away because those of us who are in our 30s and followed all the rules and all of the rules about making sure you're educated and go to university, etc. Those of us, particularly the generation that is in their 30s now, would have recognized that we came out of the school system and jobs were difficult and housing is not possible and so therefore and that's why I take the education sector so seriously, and that's why I always talk about reforming the education sector to ensure that we're training students, young people, for the rules that they will meet when they come out of school. And so it is inefficient to keep a curriculum that will train students, and then when they come out of school, they are unemployable.
But MP, I keep hearing this term, education reform. I still am not entirely sure what education reform is or what it entails. It has not been explained to the public clearly enough, so I highly doubt they understand as well. And apart from that, surely education reform, which is a wonderful term or a blanket term, might not necessarily be a standalone solution.
Certainly, but we in the United National Congress have been very specific about what we mean in terms of education reform. We've been very specific when we talk about from the early stages of the early childhood education, where we will introduce things like psychometric testing so that we understand learning abilities and that we aren't just placing students and hoping, fingers crossed, chances for success, that we understand that there are different learning abilities, learning styles, etc. And because we have free, universal early childhood education, that we can create a system where we are targeting our education sector for the success of the students who are in that space. We've also been very, very clear about because in between the 2010 to 2015 space, we would have introduced the continuous assessment, the continuous learning assessment component, where you are dependent, because not every student is an exceptional test taker. The rigors and pressures of a test day is not something that you replicate in real life when you come out of the system. But a continuous assessment of whether or not you are attaining the competencies required to move forward, those things are important. We had, and I see the government is now trying to bring back something that they removed, which was the CVQs, or the technical vocational systems, that created a space for students and persons who to develop skills that will be not just create employees, but create entrepreneurs, persons who can own their own businesses and create a more functional society, instead of trying to push all of us through one, set design. And those things would have been working, and they would have been removed for 7, 8 years at this point in time. And now, as we dawn on a decade of a PNM regime, that they're now trying to reintroduce it, and they are correcting errors of that they themselves would have made. And so I've always been very, very careful in my communications when I speak to the public, that I am always careful to outline what we intend to do, what we would have done, what we can do in the future, because I abhor the idea of a vague response where specifics are required, where we can tell you what can be done in the education sector. And we're not saying that this is a blanket standalone revolution, but once you get there and you implement certain systems, the job is on you as a policymaker to monitor and evaluate and account to the public as to whether or not this seems to be working. You set the timelines. You say, okay, we're giving this 3 years. We'll assess, we'll keep what works, we'll take out what does not work, rather than this kind of slash and burn, and we take out the program and start a new program, or we rename the program. I mean, those things have failed Trinidad and Tobago, and we have to accept that. This idea that we'll just remove something and start something new, and then when you do a careful assessment, it might be the same program, it might be a similar program, but you are not assessing whether it's not or not it has been efficient, and you are not accounting to the public, to the taxpayers, how you are spending their money, and whether or not we are indeed getting value for money.
MP Inzalin, we can expand further on this conversation, but time does not permit this morning. I want to thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your points with us this morning. Wishing you all the very best for the season ahead and into the new year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and I'll end where I started. Just everyone, let us just be as safe as possible in this Christmas season, and as we head into the new year, I hope all of us make it through.
I certainly couldn't stress on that point enough. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Let the Home Store turn your house into a home you love. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. And just for you this Christmas, come check us out for great gift ideas and all your Christmas decorations.
6 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at West Mall, Pennywise Plaza Chaguanas, C3 Center Branch, Christmas Store at C3 San Fernando, and Eastgate Mall, Trin City.
Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
It comes naturally to us. Unstoppable energy. We use it to manifest a future. A future where energy takes new forms and is used in new ways for all of us. The new age of energy is here.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Join us for the live broadcast on Saturday, December 9th as we kick off the much anticipated HOPE launch event, the ultimate celebration of transparent governance. Get ready to immerse yourself in the unveiling of our visionary roadmap for this great nation. Tune in from 2 p.m. to hear from the dedicated members of HOPE, spearheaded by the dynamic Timothy Hamill-Smith, as they share their commitment to serving the people and the country right here on WESN, Content Capital. Saturday, December 9th, 2023, this live broadcast and event starts at 2 p.m. and is coming to viewers from Paria Suites Conference Center, La Romaine. Join us in embracing the core values of hope, honesty, opportunity, performance, empowerment. Be a part of the movement for a brighter and more transparent future.
The preceding was a paid political announcement.
Oh, it's a wet, windy, damp, gloomy Friday. The perfect weather. Let me not finish that sentence. Anyway, perfect weather to just be in bed and just relaxing and just honestly enjoying the sound of the rain against the window. But if it rains, it doesn't mean that society should just automatically stop and pause. And it doesn't mean that you can increase the speed on your way to work, ladies and gentlemen. Please be very careful out there. And as I've always said, and probably as your grandparents and parents have taught you, hopefully, you know, you have to drive for others on the road as well. Anyway, let's get into some regional updates to share with you this morning, starting with Grenada. The lower house of Parliament has approved an amendment to the NAWASA Act geared to dismantle bureaucratic obstacles hindering universal access to water, which is arguably the most important resource in the world. So, this update coming from Grenada, speaking about universal access to water. Let's see what they say.
Member of Parliament for St. George North East, Ron Redhead, introduced the National Water and Sewerage Authority Amendment Bill 2023 for debate during a sitting of the lower house on Tuesday. He said the amendment is geared to facilitate the objective of the Water Access and Sanitation in Homes, or WASH program, which is currently being piloted in the Belle Isle community in the St. David constituency of Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. The WASH program is being executed in collaboration with the Nation Builders Initiative under the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, MIT, which aims to provide every household in Grenada with access to clean running water and adequate sanitation facilities by 2027.
One of the things that we have discovered is that if you're living on your grandmother's property, and she passes, God rest her soul, and she didn't have running water, she didn't do a will, so she didn't will you the property, or it's not administered, you cannot right now get a water connection, even if you have a work, and even if you have the ability to pay the water bill. And as such, removing this barrier will help now for you to get the connection so that you could build your bathroom and toilet, that sort of thing, the basic human rights, water, or access thereof.
Minister Redhead said the amendment to the Nawasa Act is long overdue.
Places will benefit positively from this. The Honourable Member for St. George North West should feel proud that St. George North West constituency, which has one of the largest concentration of pit latrines in the country, they will now be able to embark on the WASH program, and the people will be able to access running water connection. I can think also of the community of Horeb in Willis, where, Mr. Speaker, you have a situation in which many of the individuals there have been squatting on government lands, used to be an estate, for over 20 years. And it's a challenge for them to get access to running water and electricity, that sort of thing. And so this amendment will help to open up the opportunity for them to get access, as I mentioned, to the basic human right.
The proposed changes to the Nawasa Act must also be approved by senators in the upper house before coming into effect.
That's a very good initiative by the government of Grenada, and it also raises a few points here in Trinidad and Tobago. Oftentimes when you see what's taking place across the region, you tend to question what's happening here in Trinidad and Tobago. And the biggest point from this is not only the universal access to water, but it's also in regards to wills and probates. Now, when it is you have a situation here in TNT, if someone passes away, and, well, when someone passes away, if they were to leave a will behind, how long does it take for the family, for that probate to go through? And that affects a plethora of things. Of course, the deed to the land, the deed to the house, access to accounts, access to investments. It's extremely difficult. So I'm also wondering, because I'll be quite honest with you, I'm not sure whether or not the deed to your house affects a water and sewage authority connection. Now, sense would tell me here in TNT that's not the case because of the amount of illegal water connections that we do not actually tend to get rid of. You know, people are accessing water illegally. But, all right, okay, it's a different story. But altogether, there's something that is wrong, completely wrong with the probate office here in Trinidad and Tobago. It takes forever for your letters of administration to actually go through. And even after your letters of administration go through, the actual process now of being able to access all aspects that are laid out in the will, every single investment that is laid down in the will, it's even harder to go through that process as well. It's just a tedious process, and sometimes you wonder if having a will in TNT makes sense. Before you pass on whether or not you should just put everything in someone else's will. Who are you going to leave it to in the first place? Just transfer it into their name. The process is strenuous. I've heard lawyers saying here in TNT that the executor of the will, it takes so long that sometimes the executor of the will passes away and the process has to start all over again. Incredible. Transbago is a land of 1.4 million people, if so much. And this is what's happening. But anyway, that's just a point that I took note of from that regional update. Going to Antigua and Barbuda, the government says the offer of a 32% compassionate payment to former employees of LIAT 1974 Limited still stands. The update comes as efforts continue in earnest to get LIAT 2020 into the skies. So let's see what's taking place in Antigua and Barbuda with regard to LIAT.
The government continues to be laser focused on getting LIAT 2020 off the ground, and on Thursday, Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's office, Ambassador Lionel Hurst, had this update.
As soon as Airpeace is ready, and we think it will be ready before Christmas, we might see an expanded LIAT because they will bring 3 or 4 airplanes into the mix, and we get the airplanes that the CDB now owns, plus the 1 airplane that is stuck in St. Vincent, and LIAT 2020 will be on its way, we hope, before Christmas.
The Gaston Brown administration has so far kept LIAT 1974 Limited in the skies, albeit on a smaller scale, preventing a piecemeal liquidation back in 2020. Nigeria's largest carrier, Airpeace, now has a controlling 70% interest in LIAT 2020 and is set to expand the airline's fleet and footprint of services. As the transition process continues toward LIAT 2020, it is clear the assets of LIAT 1974 are limited.
So if you sell them, you might get $4 or $5 million, or some such amount, which is really not enough to meet all the obligations of LIAT 1974.
That's partly because the aircraft used by LIAT 1974 are owned by the Caribbean Development Bank, the CDB. Here is the government's hope.
So when the aircraft are sold, the money goes to CDB. And we're hoping that CDB will sell the airplanes to us at a discount, and that we can put them back into the air and make them a part of LIAT 2020.
The administration is also making it clear its offer of 32% as a compassionate payment for the former workers, in line with Antigua and Barbuda's shareholding in LIAT 1974 Limited, still stands.
Their union tells them to hold out for 100%. Well, those who have jobs flying airplanes in Africa and Canada, parts of the United States and so on, they might be able to afford that, but there are people living in Antigua who have children and families, and they need the resources, and the way they get those resources is by signing up for the compassionate payment, which the Honorable Gaston Brown, as Minister of Finance, and the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda arranged. And there still is $1 million, I think it's $1 million remaining in this account. So that any LIAT worker who is interested can in fact collect his or her money, but it won't be 100%.
Ambassador Hurst says the remaining 68% is owed by the other former shareholder governments. The administration is clearly hoping no turbulence is on the horizon for the carrier.
All right, continuing with regional updates, taking a look at St. Lucia, laws to regulate the volume of music and minimize noise pollution are being fast-tracked by the St. Lucian government. The drive towards the enactment of legislation came against the backdrop of noise complaints by residents of Gros-Islet. So let's take a look at this report.
The vibrant atmospheres of the Rodney Bay and Gros-Islet areas continue to attract visitors and locals alike. However, the boisterous atmosphere is not sitting well with some residents who are concerned about noise pollution.
We've been hearing a lot of conversation about noise pollution, specifically in the constituency of Gros-Islet. I just want to put on record a couple of things. We've held, as a parliamentary rep, on four different occasions, meetings with stakeholders as it pertains to noise pollution in Gros-Islet within my first 16 months of being parliamentary rep. This included a meeting with the Residents Association, meeting also with the police, meeting also with the private sector business owners, and of course meeting collectively with the business owners and the residents.
Member of Parliament for Grosley, Kenson Casimir, says the government of St. Lucia has taken action to formally address the issue of noise pollution.
What we've done as a government is we've engaged the AG's chambers to come up with legislation in terms of reform on how we deal with noise pollution. What we found was there's a gap between what obtained before and what is in our legislation. And so the only way we could deal with the noise pollution is if we have a decibel level that is objectively measured, which gives the private owners something to gauge when they are applying their trade.
According to the World Health Organization, noise exceeding 65 decibels constitutes noise pollution. The WHO's guidelines for nighttime noise advocate for maintaining an annual average of less than 40 decibels outside bedrooms to minimize the detrimental health effects of nighttime noise. Casimir asserts that an established decibel limit will be implemented throughout the island.
And that situation is just not for Rodney Bay, but it will affect all of St. Lucia, including Cap Estate, Bonte, all the residents in St. Lucia. And so I'm very happy as a parliamentary rep that today we can continue to have discussions as it pertains to noise pollution. What we plan to do moving forward is to engage these stakeholders again. The police, the residents, the business owners, and of course me as MP, to look at what is suggested in terms of decibel levels for the areas that we speak of and see how we can reach some form of a compromise. Everybody will not be happy. It will be impossible considering that you have residents right next to small businesses. And so we're just hoping that very soon we have this on the table for national discussion and new law.
According to Casimir, the Attorney General will meticulously evaluate locations where a similar precedent has been established and carefully weigh the various advantages and disadvantages of such an arrangement. The minister remains optimistic that a compromise acceptable to both residents and commercial entities can be achieved to establish a balanced medium.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on the Prime.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Sexologist Dr. Raj highlights concerns over pornography and child abuse link by the opposition leader. Palmer's government primary school destroyed by fire overnight. 5 held, 2 firearms and ammunition seized. Regionally, Brazil deployed troops along its borders with Venezuela. Now for the details. It's important to clarify that while concerns about the impact of pornography on society and potential connections to various social issues are raised by some, there isn't a consensus in the scientific community regarding a direct link between porn addiction and child abuse. Dr. Raj's statement seems to reflect a perspective rather than established statistical evidence. If you're interested in the statistics surrounding child abuse in TNT or the impact of pornography on society, those could be provided. However, it's crucial to approach such discussions with a nuanced understanding, as making a direct correlation between porn addiction and child abuse requires careful consideration of multiple factors and perspectives. A large portion of the Palmer's government primary school was destroyed by fire overnight. The Education Minister, Dr. Nayan Gasby-Dolly, in a report said, "This is a very unfortunate circumstance. The ministry will do what it is required for the educational continuity of its students and is working assiduously on that." She said while some areas remain intact, they were deemed unsafe and the ministry has started looking into arrangements for students for the new school term in January. 5 suspects were arrested and 2 firearms and quantities of ammunition seized by officers during ongoing Operation Blue Line exercises conducted across the country yesterday and this morning. In the latest incident, officers of the St. James Criminal Investigations Department conducted an exercise between 2 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on Thursday, 7th December 2023, during which they arrested 2 suspects, ages 24 and 20, both of Cocorite, for possession of 14 rounds of ammunition. During an anti-crime exercise, the officers stopped a blue Suzuki Swift motor vehicle with 3 male occupants. A search of the vehicle resulted in 1 round of ammunition being found. The 3 men, ages 37 to 50, of San Fernando, Moruga, and Superior, were arrested in connection with the find. Investigations are ongoing. Kudos to ICNTT for the exceptional display in the 4-man bobsleigh event at the IBSF Europe Cup in Lillehammer, Norway. Their remarkable performance earned them a commendable place in the top 10 among 18 competitive teams. Noteworthy is that Trinidad and Tobago stood out as the sole non-European team in this event. In regional news, Brazil says it is deploying troops along its border with Venezuela after the Venezuelan government announced plans to incorporate an area controlled by Guyana into its territory. The oil-rich Essequibo region has been in dispute since the 19th century when Guyana was a British colony. Venezuela renewed its land claims after offshore oil and gas reserves were discovered a few years ago. Tensions have been rising since a referendum on Sunday in Venezuela. More than 95% of voters are said to have supported the government's claim to Essequibo. Well, that's it. News on the hour on WESN. I am Sierra Ali. Thank you for watching.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Join us for the live broadcast on Saturday, December 9th as we kick off the much anticipated HOPE launch event, the ultimate celebration of transparent governance. Get ready to immerse yourself in the unveiling of our visionary roadmap for this great nation. Tune in from 2 p.m. to hear from the dedicated members of HOPE, spearheaded by the dynamic Timothy Hamill-Smith, as they share their commitment to serving the people and the country right here on WESN, Content Capital. Saturday, December 9th, 2023, this live broadcast and event starts at 2 p.m. and is coming to viewers from Paria Suites Conference Center, La Romaine. Join us in embracing the core values of hope, honesty, opportunity, performance, empowerment. Be a part of the movement for a brighter and more transparent future.
The preceding was a paid political announcement.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the program. Thank you for making the time to be with us this morning. My final guest for this edition of the program is the attorney representing the families of those divers, the 4 divers who lost their lives at the Amplia diving tragedy that took place just under 2 years ago. The Commission of Inquiry report was completed and submitted to the President. Of course, question marks surrounding what happens next, especially with the Prime Minister, whether or not he will submit it and lay it in Parliament and make such public. I'm joined by attorney at law Prakash Ramadan with us via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Ramadan. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. We are dealing with a very important issue that has gripped the attention and the hearts of our entire nation. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in assisting in moving this matter forward.
Mr. Ramadan, does the submission of the report represent some sense of relief, or does it only fuel anxiety in regards to the next steps, what's to come next?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. They're both sense of anxiety and relief, to the extent that the Commission has concluded its work. It has passed over, as it's legally bound to Her Excellency the President, who then would, of course, pass it on to the Government of Trinidad and Tobago. And we expect, of course, given them a very decent opportunity to reflect upon it. It is their responsibility and duty. And then, of course, to make it public. There's great anxiety in terms of when that would happen. And there's also some concern as to whether it be sanitized. I want to indicate, in my humble view, that there are 2 things. 1, it will be made public. And 2, I can't imagine any effort to sanitize. That means change anything in that report, having regard, of course, to the chairman's robust opening statement, and of course the public attention that has been put onto this, and in relation to when it will be released, though, that is the one query. So that is why we are, of course, giving the government an opportunity, of course, to do what they must do, and we shall be writing to them as lawyers representing at least 2 of the deceased members of their families to have a copy of that, so that we could further our efforts in terms of getting relief and so for the families. So that, as I repeat, the government would have to put before the cabinet for deliberation. Having been there, I understand it takes some level of time. And certainly we will give them what we consider to be a decent period of time. And we will be writing through them to ensure that we get an early copy and that the public be made known of the contents of that report.
According to one media report, you have suggested legal action. Well, the term that they use is promised legal action before the second anniversary of the tragedy.
Yes.
When you say legal action, precisely what are you referring to?
Well, what may not be widely known is that we had written from earlier this year letters of what we call pre-action protocol to both LMCS and to Paria. Paria, of course, has denied liability, effectively denying any liability. We were ready and we had produced our what we call statement of claim and so to be filed in the High Court and chose to hold back on it, having regard to the timing of the Commission's hearings and the promises of their report. We thought it would be infinitely better to get their recommendations so that, it will buttress our case if we do need to go to court. But at the same time, remember, we are not here seeking to have long-drawn litigation. We want some level of comfort and closure to the families that we represent, their children. So what we really had hoped for from early on, and we had made that goal, is an ex gratia payment without possible liability admissions, and the liability issues could be dealt with. Because I want to make it very clear, this is a very human, most painful, torturous episode for all involved, and in particular the immediate family and children of the deceased. Nothing could bring these gentlemen back. They want several things, one of which, of course, is an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, because these men didn't die at the event itself when they were sucked into the pipe. That is beyond question. When Christopher came out of that pipe, there was no doubt that the men were alive, and even after them, they were spouting in the pipes. And they knew full well, that is those who took authority and responsibility, that these men were alive. But they took no step, not just take no step. They actually prevented active efforts to save their lives. And that is a pain that we all feel, and I could only imagine how the immediate families would feel, and in particular the son, Michael Kurban, who had gone in and knew full well that he could have saved his father and others. He required a greater length of lifeline, that is for oxygen and so. He was prevented, and other divers who were not connected, who did not even know these men. It's a brotherhood. They came and said, we are ready. We have the competence and capability. We have the equipment. And Paria, together with the Coast Guard, effectively stopped any effort to save their lives. So that is one. I think the families it will mean a lot to hear not just an apology, but an admission of wrongdoing. And two, in a real world sense, these are breadwinners of these families that have gone. And in terms of schooling, and in terms of food, and in terms of, you name it, what a father in a home provides, or any breadwinner, all these things have been taken from them. And then on the other hand, you see the obscenity of the sort of money being spent on legal fees, 21+ million, and not a single cent for any of the families to date. So the chairman, I want to congratulate the commission itself and the chairman and the legal team led by Ramesh Lawrence Maraj. He said quite clearly, the chairman, that the decent thing to do is to make ex gratia payment without possibly admitting liability, and let the courts ultimately decide if that's where it must be. So with the report in hand, I imagine the recommendation would be in that report, and that the government could take a very strong approach, the decent, humane approach, and bring some comfort to these families financially, so that they wouldn't have to suffer beyond what they already suffer.
Is that financial compensation the source of their comfort and closure?
No, it is not. And let's make that abundantly clear. But it's an inherently important part. Like in every case, where there are accidents, where there are deaths, the courts cannot bring back life. Nor can any settlement bring back any human existence. But it does help in terms of the real world needs of the families. And that is crucially important. I could tell you in relation to one of the families, the apple of the eye of a father. They had saved up their money and sent off their child to university in Canada. Every single semester, they have to scuttle around, borrowing as well as they can to ensure that she's not pulled out of university and brought back home. That should never happen. And I will always remember last Christmas where I saw an advertisement by one of the families for a barbecue to raise funds to look after the children. I mean, really? It is absurd and obscene for that to have occurred. And for the state or the entities that is pariah, which would have incredible resources, to not make efforts to look after them, I cannot accept that as a human being and certainly not as a lawyer. So we do our part, and we expect that the conscience of this nation have enacted out, showing the level of support and abomination for what has happened and the support to the families, that the government acting responsibly will cause some level of comfort financially to the families. And I make it up front clear that the team of lawyers I work with, we have committed to not accept a single cent in this matter. So it is not about anything other than looking after the well-being, which is an inherently important part of the financial in terms of the emotional and the spiritual damage to these families. Only God will help with that, and time, of course. But they need to also hear admission of responsibility. I don't know how many would remember the evidence in the inquiry. When one of the senior members of the incident management team, after due reflection in answer to me, said they considered their actions that evening, that night, to be excellent, unacceptable, painful to hear. You know, we cannot endure that level of arrogance.
You said your co-here is suggesting that you're not troubled by the evidence presented in the case. You're more so concerned with the report. Could you please explain by what you mean by that?
Of course. The evidence is already in the public domain. It's available online. So we have that. The report, however, will carry more than just recommendations for how to deal with this particular case. The recommendations, I imagine, because I made the recommendations, and I'm sure it will fall onto fertile ground, that what we need is something like what we had already, a national operating center, where all of the expertise, all of the equipment, all of the assets necessary to deal with any sort of emergency will be readily at hand. At least the knowledge base will be there, so you know literally who you're going to call, and not be running around like headless chicken to decide what we need, who can we source it from, and so. So that cataloging is crucially important. We cannot undo what has already occurred, but certainly we could try from the recommendations to ensure that safety practices and procedures are strictly adhered to, so that we mitigate the possibility of accidents. And in the event that they do occur, to have immediate, meaningful, successful responses, and to not put in the hands of those who clearly did not have what it took to make decisions, authority and power to prevent rescues. What happened there that evening, and I'm being as generous as I can to those incident management team members, did not have either the training, the courage, the backbone to make meaningful decisions. They were seeking to mitigate and to lessen possibility of danger to all those who wish to make the rescue, to almost zero. Life is full of risks, and in a circumstance like this, there would have been inherent risks, but you could have easily mitigated on that. They were waiting for cameras that they knew full well wouldn't have been there for many hours, and went on admission and cross-examination. They knew full well that the timelines for life were minutes or at most hours, and therefore there was a high urgency to act. But they wanted to ensure as best as they can, and I put it like this, they were more interested in my humble view, in liability than in saving lives. And that to me is unforgivable. So we need to have protocols put in place, and I expect the recommendations of the report will deal with all of those things.
Now, I think something I want to go back to is you mentioned that pre-action protocol letters were sent to Pariah Fuel Trading Company as well as LMCS earlier this year. Have they responded to such what has the response been?
Yeah, well, let me just say LMCS has gone silent. But in terms of the barrier, they have responded effectively denying liability. So it was open to us then, and we were prepared to file writ actions against both. But as I repeat, in terms of the time frames where the commission had already sat or began its inquiry and evidence had started to come, we thought it infinitely better to hold our hand until the conclusion, first, of the evidence, and two, in relation to the report itself, and hopefully that the powers that be will act upon those recommendations and possibly prevent us having to exert tremendous resources into the courts. And I always, in every one of the statements I've made, reference, and this is but only one of many, but there's a case that Mr. Larry Lala did some years back where WASA's negligence caused the home to fall. We went to court. The High Court, of course, ruled in favor of the claimant. WASA appealed to the Court of Appeal. In our view, they had no case, but they went to the Court of Appeal. They lost there. Remember, legal fees are building all along. Having lost there, they went to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council, at a level of disdain, threw them out of court. There was no, and dismissed them. At the end of which, WASA had to pay for the damages, but including that was a tremendous, I imagine, legal bill. But the problem, more than anything else, is that it took several years to conclusion, and we do not wish the family to go through that. I want to avoid that because, as you have pointed out, closure is important, yes. And closure, part of it is certainly the legal or this mundane but necessary aspect of things.
I don't think anybody wants the families to go through that, Mr. Amador, but
yes,
how much can you do, and how much more can the families face? Even in regards to the legal action, without that Commission of Inquiry report in your hand and in their hands?
Well, let me say nothing prevents us from proceeding with action without the report being made public, or even to us. Because I repeat, the evidence is already before the commission, and it's on their, it's in their bosom, and it's available to all of us. And in any event, we can file a High Court action tomorrow. We could, but I repeat, I do not wish to go down that road. If it is that we could find a more peaceable settlement in this matter, so the families wouldn't have to go through the rigor of a court trial. So, in terms of the report itself, any responsible government, any government that believes in democracy, any government that believes in the right of the society to know, any government that respects the public will make available that report to the public. The voting members of our society and every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to also say, there are international eyes looking on as to how we have proceeded and what we will do with this matter. Because it really riveted not just Trinidad and Tobago, but persons from all over the world who are continuously engaged in finding out how is this matter being dealt with.
Mr. Ramadan, my final question to you. You said LMCS has gone silent. The managing director of LMCS is Kazim Ali Sr., whose son unfortunately perished in this incident. Why the silence then?
That is a matter for them, but rest assured that whatever responsibility that either or both PARI or LMCS will hold, they will have to answer for. So I am not to answer for their silence, but certainly we will use the tools available to us to ensure that, that the family's rights are heard by all involved.
But just to clarify, is Kazim Ali Sr. one of the family members that you're representing?
No, of course not. There would be certainly a conflict of interest if that were to be the case. We look after the family members of Faisal Kurban and Aliyah Henry, the daughter of Mr. Henry. So,
I know it sounds like a rather confusing question, but for clarification purposes, given what is happening, I just had to ask.
No, of course, and to make it abundantly clear, no lawyer should appear in any matter where there may be a conflict of interest. So that, of course, Kazim Ali having lost his son, that's it's very painful, of course. And he, from what we understood, was very much of a father figure in all of the engagements. But ultimately, his company, and wherever the liability is to be laid, it will be. Yes.
Certainly. Mr. Ramana, thank you very much for your time this morning. And, the anniversary of this tragedy is just under 2 months away. Unfortunate that after 2 years, there still is no level of comfort or closure.
No, there isn't. And I want to congratulate the media for continuously bringing it into the foreburner, because it is easy in a lot of cases, the amount of things that happen in the society, for it to be forgotten. You have not relented on it, and thank you for that, each and every member of the media community, that first of all brought it to our attention, the tragedy, and then to continuously put a light on it. It's necessary to keep a light on it. Thank you again.
Certainly, sir. All the very best to you and to the families. Take care.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think any amount of conversation could ever truly reflect on what these families have faced. Tragedy is just a word that we've used so commonly because it's the only thing that comes to mind, but that word probably doesn't do justice to what these families go through. February the 25th is a day that they will never, ever forget. And I think no matter what, as Mr. Ramana points out, no high court could ever bring back a life or a lost soul. They may never get that comfort or closure. Certainly, the support is needed. What the families are facing, even financially, how they are struggling, well, it's very difficult to process. It's very difficult for us to understand. But as this process continues, we should take note and we should highlight every single part of it. This is Trinidad and Tobago. And certainly we hope that we learn from this and there is never a repeat. One could only hope. One could only pray for that. I want to thank you all for joining me on the program this morning. I want to thank all my guests for their presence, for their time, and for the generosity in sharing their thoughts, their opinions, the information with us as we have these conversations. It's always been a pleasure that I'm able to start my day with you and that you choose to start your day with me. I'm Keaton Shaw, and this has been AM Prime on WESN Content Capital, the premier platform for Caribbean content, and reminding you to be safe out there today. Given the weather how it is, please be absolutely careful in everything that you do, and drive for the others on the road as well, of course. But apart from that, let's be safe in the days, the weeks, the months, and the year ahead of us. Trinidad is sweet. Let's make it a bit sweeter. We can certainly do that. And let me remind you, have yourself a Content Capital Christmas. Take care. Bye-bye.
WESN.
I'm Sean Michael Small, and we are WESN, the Content Capital.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Join us for the live broadcast on Saturday, December 9th as we kick off the much anticipated HOPE launch event, the ultimate celebration of transparent governance. Get ready to immerse yourself in the unveiling of our visionary roadmap for this great nation. Tune in from 2 p.m. to hear from the dedicated members of HOPE, spearheaded by the dynamic Timothy Hamill-Smith, as they share their commitment to serving the people and the country right here on WESN, Content Capital. Saturday, December 9th, 2023, this live broadcast and event starts at 2 p.m. and is coming to viewers from Paria Suites Conference Center, La Romaine. Join us in embracing the core values of hope, honesty, opportunity, performance, empowerment. Be a part of the movement for a brighter and more transparent future.
The preceding was a paid political announcement.
It's Christmas time, and with your family you'll spend every evening watching a movie on WESN. The classics that fill your heart with merriment and cheer as we celebrate together the most wonderful time of the year.
This is my island in December.
This Christmas, WESN celebrates with you as the content capital brings the big screen classics.
Yes!
Gather your family and tune in to WESN from December 1st to 31st at 8 p.m. nightly for We Christmas Movie Classics.
Santa's coming to town! Oh my God! Santa here? I know him! I know him!
Only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Join us for the live broadcast on Saturday, December 9th, as we kick off the much anticipated HOPE launch event, the ultimate celebration of transparent governance. Get ready to immerse yourself in the unveiling of our visionary roadmap for this great nation. Tune in from 2 p.m. to hear from the dedicated members of HOPE, spearheaded by the dynamic Timothy Hamill-Smith, as they share their commitment to serving the people and the country right here on WESN, Content Capital. Saturday, December 9th, 2023, this live broadcast and event starts at 2 p.m. and is coming to viewers from Paria Suites Conference Center, La Romaine. Join us in embracing the core values of hope, honesty, opportunity, performance, empowerment. Be a part of the movement for a brighter and more transparent future.
The preceding was a paid political announcement.
From the sacred hallowed halls of the St. Joseph's Convent Chapel, this December 9th and 10th, join us for an evening of enchanting melodies and timeless tradition at Carols at the Convent, under the direction of John Thomas and Cecilia Salazar. Be captivated by the awe-inspiring performances of the award-winning St. Joseph's Convent Choir, Port of Spain, alongside their esteemed special guests. Tickets are $200 and are available at select outlets: St. Joseph's Convent Office, the Abercrombie Tea Shop, the Living Water Bookshop, and Kitchen Corner along Circular Mall, or call 625-4502 for more information. Don't miss this musical masterpiece where every note resonates with the spirit of the season. Carols at the Convent. Get your tickets today.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former Mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas, and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop, 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's, WESN, 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook. Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Million yearly visitors in exactly 1 year's time, by December 2024. The absolute final touches, though, of this medieval monument are expected by 2030.
That's the news for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.
Comment allez-vous? How are you?
I'm dying in 2-3 years. So I have to work hard.
Let's speak about femininity.
Come on, you know well, better than me.
Just like his clothes, Yohji Yamamoto's humor is often absurd, but perfectly executed. The 80-year-old remains one of the most influential designers of the 20th and 21st centuries. Today, he's presenting his 2024 Summer Ready-to-Wear collection, with Paris's iconic Hôtel de Ville as a backdrop.
With my new collection, I was inspired by this time, especially this time, young female, young women. Because I'm getting old, to take balance.
You choose to put lace. Why?
I wanted to work against the haute couture.
Against?
Against. Of course, I'm ready-to-wear designer, but I can use lace. I wanted to improve that. That's it.
What is for you the most important thing in life?
It's temperature. Temperature is terrible. We're not scientists, we're not governor, we cannot change. We just only design for people under the sunlight and strong wind, too hot.
To guard against that febrile atmosphere, what better than an extra-large unisex T-shirt? These are the fruit of a joint venture between Yohji Yamamoto and the photographer Max Vadekul, his friend for more than 4 decades, part of a new capsule collection. For the past 20 years, capsule collections have been transforming the world of luxury. 2 big names come together to produce a limited edition range, available for a limited time period, with hefty price tags. And consumers can't get enough.
Yeah. This time I collaborated with the ASICS, and also we collaborated with the 49, that is the Japanese optical glasses, the company. Yeah.
Luxury marketing methods often go hand in hand with simple and even eco-responsible clothing lines. CLCF is the acronym for Clothing for Contemporary Life. The 3D knitting patterns are produced on computers. The polyester fibres are certified, responsibly produced and sometimes metallic.
So metallic yarn is always the material remind us the near future, such as some SF movie or like the Terminator or Daft Punk or some kind of the culture gave us the huge image. So I decided to lay out a lot of the metallic, and also I'll take a lot of the metallic fabrics used. Yeah.
Now quiet please as we introduce a major new trend, quiet luxury. In short, a celebration of timelessness, quality and comfort, as embodied by Maiko Kuroguchi, so discreet that only her hands are visible.
There are lots of facets on the ceramics, including the tactility and motif drawn on the ceramics. So it was very interesting to translate those elements into the clothing.
Take a moment to listen to birdsong. Issey Miyake's collection is an interrogation of formless yet vital entities, like light or wind. The music and sounds that accompany the show are the work of the contemporary Belgian ensemble Ictus.
It was mysterious and poetic. We got a call at the end of June asking if we were free, that they wanted to work with us. And then it all started with, well, I want to say faxes, because they were these short little emails that were like faxes, like poems or haikus. They included keywords for the collection that emerged one by one. For example, we'd receive an email that read, a form without a form. We started to think of the music. Then the following week, we'd get a message, a walk in the forest. And then we saw the first looks, with that idea of the flag flapping in the wind, the idea of folding, and we built the music so that it would echo ideas about the wind, folds, and walking in the forest. The first thing to say is that we're presenting this collection as part of a show. But we thought that to really convey the ideas that underpin it, we needed to include several creative disciplines, including music and dance. The whole experience needed to work as a whole.
The starting point was a flag.
Yes, a flag that takes over the sky. The idea of a natural entity that doesn't have a fixed shape. That's why this collection is called Grasping the Formless. You can discern the shape of the body underneath these beautifully worked pieces. It's like they're ephemeral.
What does Japanese fashion represent for you?
Essence. It's a return to an essence, to minimalism, a certain delicacy.
Things we might sometimes forget.
Yes, things that can be difficult to make time for in our busy Western lives.
Japanese designers have been making their mark on the Paris fashion scene since the 80s and continue to prove their mastery of the art of merging form and movement.
Now, Paris is well known for its often spectacular light displays, but it's not just during the festive months that it glistens. In fact, in Paris, there are hundreds of illuminated sites, including monuments, statues, churches and bridges. Let's take a look at Paris's love affair with light.
France in Focus on France 24 and France24.com.
It's a French département created from the union of the land in two rivers, the Lot and the Garonne. It's therefore not surprising that some of the most beautiful gardens in France can be found here. Mini Edens, whose histories are both astonishing and little known. For example, this one in Temple-sur-Lot. These trees, this water, and this Japanese bridge. The scenery is reminiscent of a famous series of paintings, Claude Monet's Amplia. Indeed, it was these gardens, belonging to this nursery owner, that provided the painter's initial inspiration. And it was here that colored water lilies were cultivated for the first time in Europe in the 19th century.
These ponds were created here in La Tour Marliac in 1870. And this was the original nursery.
All these ponds were needed so that water lilies could proliferate as quickly as possible, and a whole range of coloured ones could be grown.
Robert Sheldon, the present owner of the site, tends 13 varieties of water lilies. They were created here in Temple-sur-Lot and have been sold around the world since the turn of the 20th century.
If you go to China, Germany, Japan or the US, water lilies are called by their French names. Everyone knows that tulips are from the Netherlands, but not many people realize that water lilies are, in fact, French, specifically from the Lot-et-Garonne.
This is where Claude Monet fell in love with water lilies. He bought them in their hundreds for his residence in Giverny in Normandy.
This is the invoice for Claude Monet. You can see that he made his first order at La Tour Marliac in 1894. He ordered a large amount of aquatic plants because he'd just created his water garden in Giverny, so it meant there was nothing in it at the time.
30 or so miles further south, in Nérac, another garden of the Lot-et-Garonne has an astonishing, almost legendary history. It was along these paths that a passionate love affair sprang up between a certain Fleurette and Henri de Navarre, the future Henri IV.
Supposedly, he agreed to meet her in this park, in these grounds, one evening after a court ball in the chateau. But unfortunately, with all the music, the dancing and the wine, he forgot poor Fleurette, who, in despair, threw herself into the river Baise and drowned.
Fleurette was young, wasn't she?
Yes, she was young. She was 16 and Henri was 19. They were young lovers.
Whose love affair only lasted a day.
That's right. It only lasted a day, but the legend lives on forever.
The legend has bequeathed an expression to French literature, conter Fleurette, which has become to flirt in English. The inhabitants of Nérac, who've come to learn about the history of their area, are more than proud of the story.
You can never know enough about the history of your region. And sometimes you go a long way to learn about the history of other places, when you've actually got history right on your doorstep.
A bit further north, in Duras, another couple of lovers chat each other up in a garden as they walk among the fruit trees. For Vincent and his wife, this story has a happy ending.
Look!
Oh yes, look at those pears.
Saint-Jean pears.
Loads are on the ground, but there are still plenty left. Isn't nature bountiful?
You're right.
In 2020, Vincent won the World Jam Championship.
This is concentrated fruit, sugar and aromas. I could make one of my apple jams with mint.
This is the fruit of the labor of husband and wife. When they met 20 years ago, he was running a nursery, but didn't know what to do with his apple harvest.
We were inundated with fruit, almost drowning in it. So we came up with the idea of making jams.
She went to the nearby market in Montségur with a tiny table, sold a few jars of jam, and that's how we started, wasn't it, darling?
Just like that.
And today, their jams sell in their thousands. Vincent has left his orchards for his kitchen, and he buys the finest products in the region.
This is fresh rhubarb. It's from the Lot-et-Garonne. As you know, this département is called the Orchard of France. We have everything. We can have all the fruit and vegetables that we want, especially as I make jams not just out of fruit, but out of vegetables too. So I'm going to make some rhubarb and geranium jam. It's a perfect combination.
Vincent grew up in the Lot-et-Garonne, the perfect breeding ground for a future world champion.
If you're lucky enough to be born in this part of the world, you get to know all the right tastes. You don't get caught out. But what helped me to succeed and win the World Championships is because I make unique jams with exceptional fruit.
Today, Vincent's jars are served at the finest hotels and restaurants. He has 80 different jams on offer, with a palette of colors, as rich as those of the gardens of the Lot-et-Garonne.
The world world is ever changing. The news doesn't wait.
France 24 gives a global perspective that an educated, intelligent, and active viewer is going to want to have to be able to fully understand the issues of the day.
That's why it will always be there to help make sense of world events.
J'ai l'habitude de suivre France 24 partout où je me trouve, et ce grâce à mon smartphone, parce que je ne reste pas souvent devant la télé.
Quand une information circule sur la toile, j'utilise l'application de France 24 pour vérifier l'authenticité.
For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what, France 24 is with you everywhere, all the time.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
I'm Paul Rees, covering stories from Sweden for France 24, live from Stockholm and on France 24 news programmes.
Paul Rees, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
A few months ago, Marie was born. Her birth brought up many questions that I just couldn't keep to myself. Questions about my Algerian father, who was the son of an Arki.
Je suis à la rencontre un petit peu des gens qui ont vécu ici, puis dans le camp. Je peux pas vous poser quelques questions?
C'est dur à expliquer, c'est sûr que moi j'ai déjà du mal à l'expliquer à mes enfants.
Si c'était le pire, le camp de Bias, c'était un hôpital psychiatrique à ciel ouvert.
Les bâtiments ressemblaient à des bâtiments comme dans les camps de concentration.
On nous a cachés, on dirait qu'on avait la peste, parce que M. de Gaulle il nous a mis le couteau du FLN sous la gorge.
J'ai fini, merci. Je peux pas.
I'm sorry, Granny. Forget about it.
WESN.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Sexologist Dr. Raj highlights concerns over pornography and child abuse link by the opposition leader. Palmer's government primary school destroyed by fire overnight. 5 held, 2 firearms and ammunition seized. Regionally, Brazil deployed troops along its borders with Venezuela. Now for the details. It's important to clarify that while concerns about the impact of pornography on society and potential connections to various social issues are raised by some, there isn't a consensus in the scientific community regarding a direct link between porn addiction and child abuse. Dr. Raj's statement seems to reflect a perspective rather than established statistical evidence. If you're interested in the statistics surrounding child abuse in TNT or the impact of pornography on society, those could be provided. However, it's crucial to approach such discussions with a nuanced understanding, as making a direct correlation between porn addiction and child abuse requires careful consideration of multiple factors and perspectives. A large portion of the Palmer's government primary school was destroyed by fire overnight. The Education Minister, Dr. Nayan Gasby-Dolly, in a report said, "This is a very unfortunate circumstance. The ministry will do what it is required for the educational continuity of its students and is working assiduously on that." She said while some areas remain intact, they were deemed unsafe and the ministry has started looking into arrangements for students for the new school term in January. 5 suspects were arrested and 2 firearms and quantities of ammunition seized by officers during ongoing Operation Blue Line exercises conducted across the country yesterday and this morning. In the latest incident, officers of the St. James Criminal Investigations Department conducted an exercise between 2 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on Thursday, 7th December 2023, during which they arrested 2 suspects, ages 24 and 20, both of Cocorite, for possession of 14 rounds of ammunition. During an anti-crime exercise, the officers stopped a blue Suzuki Swift motor vehicle with 3 male occupants. A search of the vehicle resulted in 1 round of ammunition being found. The 3 men, ages 37 to 50, of San Fernando, Moruga, and Superior, were arrested in connection with the find. Investigations are ongoing. Kudos to Team TNT for their exceptional display in the 4-man bobsleigh event at the IBSF Europe Cup in Lillehammer, Norway. Their remarkable performance earned them a commendable place in the top 10 among 18 competitive teams. Noteworthy is that Trinidad and Tobago stood out as the sole non-European team in this event. In regional news, Brazil says it is deploying troops along its border with Venezuela after the Venezuelan government announced plans to incorporate an area controlled by Guyana into its territory. The oil-rich Essequibo region has been in dispute since the 19th century when Guyana